let's crack straight into the video test. The Nova 5 Pro, as you can see here, check out for the stabilization on this. That background is really bright, so you will see these phones struggling to keep everything exposed properly, both the shadows and the highlights. Both the Xiaomi devices definitely have a different color to the Huawei devices, but you'll see in a second that stabilization is very decent among all the phones. This is Huaqiangbei in Shenzhen. This is where most of the electronic components in the whole world originate and are traded. All of those boxes are containing components that will go in your electronics, and they get traded and sent from this location. It's a really interesting place. If you're ever in Shenzhen, you definitely have to go and see it. Anyway, the video out of all four of these phones looks really good at the moment. So both of the Xiaomi devices use a triple camera setup with a main, an ultra wide and a zoom camera. The Nova 5 Pro shares the same main sensor as those two phones. It also has an ultra wide camera. It also has a macro lens and a depth sensor. The P30 Pro has a zoom camera. We all know about this zoom camera by now. It is a really neat bit of kit. Just to show you how much it really helps imaging, using the ultra wides on both phones, you get similar results. Moving on to the main sensor, again, results are similar. This is 5 times zoom and you start to see a little bit of noise, and at 10 times zoom, it gets really noisy. But the P30 Pro keeps so much clarity at that range, and this is just ridiculous. This is a spy camera. You can only get this from the P30 Pro and maybe the Oppo Reno. You can almost see what she's writing. So yeah, if you want that, you need the P30 Pro. But have a look at these images from the Nova 5 Pro. Colors are great. It takes really good images from that main sensor there. As I said, that main sensor is the same as in the two Xiaomi devices. So let's see all of these side by side.
Won't cost a thing, so it's yours. Worth a try. Oh, this is the real thing. I'm down if you're down, boy. Get next to me, get next to me. All that I want is to get next to you, get next to you. Not asking for much, but it feels like the two of us are golden. Now gold, you see. We'll do you good, so take a chance on me. It's magical when you are close, so get close with me. We'll do you good, cause I am golden, I'm golden.
You get this macro mode in the Huawei's. You can get up to 4 centimeters close. This shot looks really great until you put it side by side with the P30 Pro, and I just feel like the P30 keeps a lot more detail in the shadows. You can use 48 megapixel mode on the Xiaomi devices, but it doesn't have the specific macro mode that the Huawei devices do. Anyway, let's see what ultra wide video is like on these phones.
Inside your bedroom, we stopped counting the days, lost in the rhythm. Physical silence, no need to speak a word, lay here beside me.
Zooming in on video, the P30 Pro keeps a lot more detail than the Nova 5 Pro. You can see it just looks less grainy. The Nova 5 Pro holds up pretty well against the K20 Pro, however, and the Mi 9 definitely looks more grainy and noisy than the Nova 5 Pro. If we just switch back to the P30 Pro, you can see there's a pretty big difference.
Oh my God, you know you're playing your cards so right. Oh, I was looking for hearts, just in the dirty clubs and diamonds. Take me, oh my God, oh, but we'll hold our faces straight. Oh, I was looking for hearts, I was looking for hearts. Your blood is pumping, I feel it in your veins, surfing your heat.
phones side by side today, I noticed a big difference in how you can zoom. So you can use the ultra wide on the Xiaomi, but you have to press that button and you can only zoom 2 times. If you want to zoom in more than that, you have to come out of the ultra wide camera into the main sensor and then zoom in from there. You get 10 times zoom. It's not the best. On the Redmi, you can just go from ultra wide, main, and into the zoom in the same settings. So yeah, I think the K20 has a big advantage over the Xiaomi in that regard. It's way easier to use. But by far, the easiest phones to use are the Huawei devices. It's just much more intuitive how they put the camera app together. On the Nova 5 Pro, you can go from ultra wide, main, and 2 times. The slider bar just seems easier to use and easier to press. That's just what I found from using the phones all day and testing them. The P30 Pro just takes it up a step more. You've got wide, main, 5 and 10 all on those buttons. You can zoom in a little bit more from there. The Nova 5 Pro is very similar to the P30 Pro in a lot of ways. The camera apps are almost identical in the way they work. Obviously, you just get more functionality out of the P30 Pro. It's a more expensive phone and you get the zoom. You also have the P30 non-Pro variant, which sits in the middle of these two in pricing. So it's up to you what you want. You don't get the zoom camera on the Nova 5 Pro, but you do get the ultra wide, which is really useful. You get that 48 megapixel sensor, which you can crop into. If you want to take 48 megapixel shots, just crop into it, and it looks about the same. They all have 960 frames a second slow-mo. It's a cool effect, and for this type of thing, I don't think any differences in quality are really noticeable. The Nova 5 Pro night mode definitely improves things, but have a look against the P30 Pro. That camera is just on a different level. And I also think the Xiaomi devices have a really good night mode. Not just in this test, but in other tests as well. They've always come out really well. One thing to note though, on the Huawei devices, night mode can take anywhere up to 6 seconds to take a photo. So just keep that in mind if you're going to take some night shots. Which one you prefer is going to be down to personal choice. Now obviously this is night mode, but it's not very dark out here. The city is lit up with all these different lights, but it gives a cool look. Taking video in low light, pretty much all the phones really struggle with stabilization and some rolling shutter. They don't look that great. I've yet to come across a phone that just beats the iPhone in terms of nighttime video. But anyway, which one you prefer out of these, again, will be down to your personal choice. All of the phones are definitely way better at taking stills during nighttime than they are taking video. But even here, the stabilization on the phones is pretty decent, but you do get a lot of this weird shaking. I'm not exactly sure what is happening with the camera here on all of the phones, but this is just something you get during nighttime. It looks pretty jittery, so it's better not to walk around. You can see that when the phones are stable, they take much better images overall, and they are all relatively similar in the way they look. Here's a better shot to see just how exactly they expose images. This was really, really dark, so to get any image out of this is pretty good. I had a look at the images that I shot in the daytime from all of these cameras, and this phone holds up really well against the two Xiaomi devices from what I've seen. And the P30 Pro is just that little step up in the camera department with video and photo and zoom. But you expect that because the P30 Pro is a flagship and costs, what, 50–60% more than this. So for the price, I think it holds up really, really well. I don't miss the 2x zoom camera, and zoom in photo and in video I thought was really good, even compared to those two devices that have the 2x zoom camera.